Once upon a time, the landscape of the world was a little different. But one day it would be changed, starting with a fateful argument. Phaethon was Prince of Nubia, in Africa. One day his mother, Queen Clymene, told Phaethon that the sun was his father. That she and the sun were lovers and Phaethon was born from their union. This became a source of great pride for Phaethon to be of such lofty birth. But Phaethon had a childhood rival, Apophis, future king of Egypt. Apophis was the son of Jove, king of the gods. But despite Apophis's divine lineage, Phaethon considered himself equal to him because of his descent from the sun god, Phoebus Apollo. Apophis grew tired of Phaethon's claims and mocked him. "You're crazy to believe everything your mother says. You're puffed up over a fantasy about who your father is." Phaethon was angered, but found there was nothing to say. He had no actual proof that Apollo was his father. He was only going by his mother's words. Ashamed, Phaethon told his mother about the argument. Clymene swore to Phaethon that Apollo was indeed his father and that Phaethon could go to Apollo's palace and learn from the god himself. Clymene assured Phaethon that, as Apollo's son, he would be able to go to him safe and unharmed. So Phaethon did just that, and ventured across the lands to the palace of the sun. Clymene was true. Phaethon was able to reach the palace and even enter into the presence of the sun god safely. The Sun Palace was magnificent, made of gold, silver, ivory and gems, designed with divine craftsmanship. Apollo sat enthroned, wearing royal purple robes and attended by the 4 seasons, summer, spring, autumn and winter. The 12 hours of the day stood around his throne. Apollo's crown of sun rays made him too radiant for Phaethon to approach, but Apollo lowered his crown and called Phaethon over to him so that he could give him a hug.
"What reason brings you here? What do you look for on these heights, Phaethon, son that no father would deny?"
And Phaethon asked that if this is true, to prove his lineage to him. Apollo gladly accepted.
"So that you can banish doubt, ask for any favor, so that I can grant it to you."
And Apollo swore on the river Styx to give Phaethon whatever he asked for. Immediately, Phaethon asked to drive the chariot of the sun for 1 day. Horrified at this request, Apollo begged for Phaethon to reconsider and ask for anything else. Young Phaethon did not have the strength or power for this divine task. Apollo explained that only he was capable of driving the chariot. Not even Jove, Zeus to the Greeks, king of the gods, could handle the fiery horses of the sun. Apollo meant for his offer to be a gift, but this wish would be a certain tragedy. Apollo pleaded over and over for Phaethon to ask for something else, but each time Phaethon insisted. And Apollo was bound to honor his oath. Eventually, the time approached for the sun to make its journey. Lucifer, son of the morning, began to shepherd the stars of the night from the sky, so that he could usher in the sun. Apollo once again begged for Phaethon to change his mind before it was too late. Phaethon again refused. Forced to yield, Apollo gave Phaethon the crown of rays, and instructed his son as the horses were prepared. "Don't fly too high or you'll burn the heavens. Fly too low, and you'll burn the earth. And stay on the proper path, because there were dangers in the sky." The time had come. Phaethon stood in the chariot and took off to start his course, thanking his father along the way. But little Phaethon didn't weigh enough, and the chariot bounced around like it was empty. And he was too weak to pull the horses in with the reins, so they quickly started flying off course. They fly to the North Pole, where the Draco constellation, the serpent, is normally cold and dormant. But it gets roused and made active by the sun's heat. Phaethon looks down and, seeing how high up he is, his heart drops with fear. The horses then enter the zodiac, where Phaethon sees Scorpio, readying his pincers and stinger to attack. Phaethon completely throws the reins away in fright. Feeling the reins slap around free, the horses know they're completely unchecked and go wild. They climb upward steeply, plunge down sharply and fly wherever their impulse takes them. When they dip low, the earth is set on fire. Mountains burn. Forests are consumed. Cities and their walls melt. Whole populations are wiped out by the heat as entire nations were incinerated. Rivers and seas began to evaporate. It was then, they say, that the sun dipping too low in some areas changed the people's complexion, creating the dark-skinned races. Much of the land in Africa dried up and became the Sahara Desert, as it remains today. In Mesopotamia, the Euphrates River boils. As does the Rhine River in France and Germany. The ground itself breaks open under the heat. The light of the sun beams through the cracks even down to the underworld. The heavens aren't spared either. When the chariot climbs too high, even Mount Olympus, home of the gods, begins to catch fire. The Titan god, Atlas, struggles to hold the burning skies. Earth itself raises up to speak to Zeus. She asks that if she is to be destroyed by fire, let him do it with his hot thunderbolts instead, since that would be quicker and less cruel than the suffering caused by the sun chariot. She warns Zeus that he must end this catastrophe, or else not only will she, Earth, perish, but also the seas of Zeus's brother, Poseidon, and maybe the heavens as well, sending everything back to formless chaos like in the beginning of creation. So Zeus went to the highest peak on Earth. He called the gods together to witness that he needed to intervene against Phaethon or the whole world could be destroyed. This was especially for Apollo, who gave Phaethon the chariot, and needed to know that the dark moment of his son's fate had arrived. Zeus's thunderbolt killed Phaethon almost instantly, setting his hair on fire and engulfing his body in flames as he dropped from the chariot. Apollo could only stand by as Phaethon fell headlong to the earth, leaving a trail in the sky like a shooting star. In his grief, Apollo's countenance grew dark like in an eclipse. He now hated the light. Hated day. Angry at both Zeus and himself, Apollo considered leaving his role as the sun. He said some other god can take up the task.
Whoever wants to, can drive the chariot of light. If no one does, and all the gods acknowledge they cannot, let Zeus himself do it. Then when he has felt the strength of those horses, with hooves of fire, he will know that the one who failed to handle them didn't deserve to be killed for it.
The gods gathered around Apollo and pleaded for him not to leave the world in darkness, devoid of his light. Zeus was sympathetic to Apollo's loss and tried to explain himself. But as king, he wasn't beyond simply threatening Apollo also. Ultimately, Apollo returned to his duties as the sun. He gathered up the solar horses and took them home, lashing them angrily for their behavior. Phaethon lay buried, with an epitaph on his tomb. Yet Phaethon isn't the only one of Apollo's sons that Zeus killed. But that's a story for another day.